Welcome back to Animal Songs, a story set to music, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb. What do you want to learn about? For some people, this is kind of an obvious way of navigating life. Find your stream and start swimming. For other people, those of us who are not so confident in our strokes, how can you save men from drowning? They'll just drag you down too. Oh, and all the lovely condemnation crackles with confusion. It's the way the world works. They smile on the drowning man just to remind him of his misery and maintain their position. Stay in your lane. That's the only real advice. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Your adversaries are illusions. Nothing's what it seems. Psyche. Flamingo. New York City is an island off the coast of New York State. I'm not familiar with Old York. I know only that it was the name of a noble house that now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York. This island was once a murky swamp. The British purchased it from the natives with a single glass bead, or so the story goes. Each party thought that they were outwitting the other, since to the Americans the concept of owning an entire island was clearly absurd, while a glass bead can fit nicely inside of a leather pouch. "We're not getting this back," they said to each other, everybody poking his neighbor's ribs with mocking elbows. As the backdrop for my excursions into the wizard's realm, New York was not a place of history with legends lurking around every corner. The city was concrete hills and car-filled rivers on the inside, the cold, mysterious Hudson, the actual river, and the Gowanus Canal, the gateway to the ocean, on the outside. Above 125th Street, if the season was right, you could encounter sea lions along the Greenway, the tree-lined path that runs the length of the island. One day, I'm gonna learn that form, I said to myself at 5 a.m. while I hid in a spruce tree watching the animals yawn, smelling their fishy musk. I'll take to the ocean. Or maybe I'd turn everyone else into the animals. There was no telling where my power could lead me. In other words, I wasn't particularly interested in Mayor Bloomberg's soda tax. I wasn't aware of Abe Lincoln's autumn amble through the newly planted Central Park and Charlie Parker's stay in a building 6 blocks from my own apartment. I'm ashamed to say that I scoffed at such knowledge. What were these dead facts next to my nightly flights through the heavens? So then this is why. Because she was everything I was not. Peter's last act in this world was to escort me across the Gowanus into the borough of Queens. His co-workers were having a get-together at a beer garden towards the end of the in-queue line, and I probably had been spending too much time inside. Neither of us knew our fates. 2 stops from the end, the door opened, and as the bell chimed, the tallest girl in the world stepped into the compartment. Her heart-shaped face was framed with long raven curls, and she was draped in iridescent purple, her dress a lighter shade than her mauve jacket, which created the illusion that her eyes were the same color as those deep pools took me in. She glanced at me for an instant, and I looked her up and down. Who wouldn't? Then she said, "Oh, Peter." Inexplicably, my friend was exiting the train. Unsure of what was happening, I rose to follow him. Turning after us, the girl said, "Are you going to—" "Yeah, we just have quick stop." "Okay, we'll see you." She looked to me. "This is my friend." The doors closed. Peter and I stood on the platform in the cold air, watching the yellow-lit train chug into the night. Why the hell did we get off? This was after our first fight, but before our last, and so our friendship had become a sort of dead routine neither of us knew how to end or repair. Peter did not answer my question directly. He chuckled and shrugged and mumbled to his feet. I understood. "Well, well, well," I said in what I believed to be an amiable tone. I clapped Peter on the back and he shrank away from my hand. He quickly brought up the subject of music, asking me if I'd ever compared the infinite renditions of Tea for Two, starting with Art Tatum. By the time he got to Shostakovich, the next train had arrived. The beer garden was a yard of long picnic tables, bordered by 10-foot-tall fences. The winter night was brisk but tolerable, and the cold actually made the drinking more pleasant. Peter and I found a table against the back fence, where a sour woman set a pitcher and plastic cups in front of us. We paid her and poured our glasses and clinked them in silence. The beer was bitter and bready, and after one sip I felt my face flush. My fingers were cold and getting colder wrapped around the thin plastic cup, but quickly my extremities numbed. I was in another world of Bavarian conviviality and drunken dislocation. Everywhere people laughed and yelled, huddled around benches under the light of red glowing lanterns. This was not like any place I had been before. I tried to cast aside a glimmering image of a tavern in India, but it remained just out of sight throughout the evening. In the meantime, pleasantly dislocated, I poured us a second drink and asked Peter when we would find that purple friend of his. She'd be hard to miss, I said, and I nudged him with my elbow. I was wrong, however. Everywhere long shadows loomed. Peter elaborated on the legend of Tahiti Trot. See, it was a bet between Shostakovich and, I forget the other guy, but he had to reorchestrate the whole thing after just one listening. It became his opus number, something, but it's T for two. Can you believe it? I assured him that I could not. How come you don't write anymore? Write what? I sipped my beer and scanned the dark crowd, pushing the smell of sage back into my mind. I always liked your compositions. That funk opera was hilarious. Peter, thank you. I appreciate your encouragement. However, it's not really necessary. My writing is silly. And I believe that I've found out life is more serious than funk music. What did I know about life or music? I couldn't even hear the pigeons cooing behind my back. Occasionally, I might feel the joy of a fat sparrow pecking breadcrumbs from between my feet. Yet these feelings I felt were for the birds. And so she came to me. You're scared, Peter said into his glass. Peter, you would not believe what I've been through. I showed you the compass. Could you even begin to guess? Explain it then, if you know so much. I'm telling you, I grumbled into my cup. I'm not interested in your opinions about life. I didn't need to hear him confirm my fears about my mental state. These mysteries were beyond the understanding of my straightforward companion, or so I felt. How could I share myself with someone when I didn't even know who I was? You think you're better than everyone. Oh, you can read my mind? Out of the darkness she appeared in the glow of the red lantern above us. Several co-workers, a bald-headed, olive-skinned guy in a blue knit sweater, 2 dudes in leather jackets with slick-back hair, and 3 giggling girls formed a ring around her. Peter introduced me to the group, and she sat across from me. I looked to my friend, but he directed his attention to the olive-skinned guy. The tall girl, Florence, as she had been introduced, spat her deep, dark eyes at me. Peter's an incredible harpist, I said. I indicated the pitcher, and she extended her glass, which I dutifully filled. So you know him from school? He's literally the only thing I remember. Florence laughed, and I, speaking to you now from the distant rocking chair where that brutal bass plagues my thoughts, this memory fills my heart. The feeling is so straightforward and obvious, but when you're young and full of questions, you cannot believe such simple yearnings. Florence was clear. She laughed and assured me that I was not the only person who had been sleepwalking through school. She had studied dance. She was simply too tall. Now her only choice was to become the preeminent 6-foot ballerina, or she would have to find some other use for her love of motion. See, she thudded one elbow on the wooden table, held her palm out as if she were holding a service tray, and atop this hand she stuck her other elbow, creating a sort of tower of arms. What does that mean to you? I had no idea, but I think I understand. The body talks, poetry in motion, this stuff's real. Everything totally means something. I couldn't agree with you more. I glanced at Peter. He was nodding and smiling as the other co-workers in his ring chatted, and though I looked at him for a moment, he never turned to meet my eyes. That night, after an awkward train ride during which we discussed music, and I indulged Peter with a description of a possible funk harp rendition of the story of Orpheus, we arrived home, where I asked Peter about the situation directly. Oh, sure, she's great. You know what I mean, do you? Because I really do. He smiled weakly and nodded and clapped me on the shoulder. He's all right, I told myself. He doesn't mind. I got to know Florence, and she brought forth my twice-tread journey to the ocean. Once I had succeeded, only to arrive at my destined tragedy on the shores of the Wizard's Forest. Once I had failed, and yet I came to kindle a desire in my heart that was perhaps the roaring furnace behind my quest. If I could tell the story, if I could control the path, if I could transform my reality into fantasy, my fantasy into reality, faced with this imposing beauty offering me something tangible, a gift from life like the one I had once refused in Boston, I was forced to untangle these threads of my modeled tapestry. Florence loved to laugh, and as we were in New York City, it was obvious to me that I should take her to see a comedy show. New York is the capital for comedy, she told me that night over our beer, so with Peter's tacit consent, I called her and invited her to Gotham Comedy Club. It is indeed a real place, though the name is fanciful, a reference to a fictional city with the same spires and angular Art Deco edifices as its real twin. In the story, a rich man uses his wealth to style himself after an animal, using the fear and mystery which that totem inspires to take on those forces of terror at work in the world. I did not choose this location for these reasons, but now, reading this very real series of meanings out of this location, what a place to meet my love. The room was a red velvet dinner theater, and we sat at a cocktail table at the foot of the stage. Florence again wore purple, a magenta shade tonight, and low cut, a sign any novice can interpret. It was a Wednesday night, and the comedians were all our age, all aspiring, learning. What became of those performers who entertained us? Was this Wednesday just another cycle for them, or was it charmed? Were all of us in the arms of destiny together? Perhaps you'll think I'm being overly poetic, but if it weren't for Peter, that only single person that stuck out to me in my tide of experience, I could have been cast adrift forever. Peter was not strong enough to defeat the dragon. Florence was another story. The comedians aroused more pity than laughter, and we smiled and chuckled politely. Once the show was over, we walked and found ourselves alone in a small park. What was the name? I remember it clearly, a stone courtyard covered with bushy trees that secluded many geometric sculptures. There was a bench shaped like a crescent moon, reflecting the city lights around us, shining just like the real thing. We sat there and talked aimlessly about the show and our dreams. Hers in reality, and a few glimpses of mine, some facts about symbols, very interesting and not at all insane, while our smiles gleamed like the Cheshire Cats flaunting our secret. Eventually we kissed. I escorted her to the train and we went our separate directions, she across the bridge to that other shore where we had met, and I back to my lonely tower on Convent Avenue. Alone in the well-lit train, I was giddy. Finally, I had corrected my mistake from the past. In one small step, I had given myself to life. As I emerged from the subway stop to hike uphill through the cool night air, my feelings changed. She began to whisper. What about your quest? What about the answers? What about fixing the world? Aren't you being selfish? Only you, my little helper, only you. Don't you remember the feeling of the wind in your mane? I arrived home to a dark, empty apartment. Peter had already left the city. A box of his things remained in the hallway. He'd asked me to ship it to him in Colorado, where he'd retreated to the mountains. He'd also asked me to ship the harp. In the darkness, with the strange city lights gleaming through the window, the curved form resembled an angel huddled in the shadows. That Peter had left his instrument behind spoke to me. That he'd entrusted it to me had a deeper meaning. He'd asked me to send his precious object, his means of communion with his spirit, the way he expressed himself, he'd given to me to transmit back to him. I knew that he had loved her. It was these feelings, more than my blind curiosity, that bid me to open the case that night and strum upon the harp. The instrument has multicolored strings so that you can find your place among the notes. Red, blue, silver, and bronze chords run in sequence. There are hand positions a trained harpist uses to find his place, with the long middle finger serving as the guide. The instrument itself is the embodiment of classicism. A Doric column supports a double arc, forming that divine shape of folded wings. Foot pedals allow the player to shift between the keys. It is an ornate instrument, beauty embodied, a masterpiece containing masterpieces. That night, in the false light of the city, I sat on the edge of the gray couch Peter had left behind, and I bent his harp to me. I strummed in C, the home key, ignoring the foot pedals for the moment, and feeling my way through the string pattern, those colors glinting in the harsh street light. I did not think then of the open window beside me or the stacks of little yellow-lit windows surrounding it, the neighboring buildings along the block. On this night of my first kiss with Florence, I played a serenade to all of Harlem. Did I bother anyone? Did I disturb somebody's sleep? Or did I do something good that night in the key of C? Once I'd packed the harp away, I crawled into my dog's bed before my looming wizard's compass. As I drifted into the dream, her distant whispers beckoning me to her, I asked myself, what was I supposed to become? My sleep didn't last long. The forgotten flotsam of my shattered ship washed my feet. I had such sharp claws. I awoke in darkness. In that moment, a wild plan hatched from my worried mind. I got dressed, black jeans and my trusty white hoodie, and I set out on a third walk, this time to reach the end of Manhattan. This is not an adventure that I would recommend to anyone. New York City at 3 a.m. is as dangerous as a jungle. Many of the faces will be friendly. As in the jungle, there are more birds than tigers, more caterpillars than scorpions. Tread carefully and watch for their signs. Stay close to the twittering friends and avoid dark corners. Once more I ventured into my own soul, the deserted streets of an ancient city, where suspicious shadows lurked. Distant laughter caused me to smile maniacally. I am the most dangerous thing out here, I told myself, unarmed, full of pride and confusion. Perhaps it was true. It is difficult for me, secluded in my rocking chair as I am now, to fully assume the form of my younger self. This is not from a lack of skill. It is fear. It has not been so long since I last embodied that flying white serpent. But, as you will see, that form is not an easy shape to shed. She wants him. She calls for her Stormbringer. I can hear her bell ringing. But it must be told, and I will tell you this way. At 3 a.m., I descended from the hills of Harlem to creep along Broadway. I was afraid. Would Florence understand me? This was the true question that ruled my unsettled heart. My developed eye can read it quite clearly today. But with her whispers clouding my already confused mind, in that darkness my thoughts turned a different direction. Just who was this girl for whom I was questioning myself? I had discovered the power behind this reality to which she was hopelessly stuck. This judgment hurt. I felt my chest tighten. A dull chuckle echoed out of a black alleyway. She was just a person, and it hurts now. I can't go on. Then, at the same thought, I had to stop. I don't want to hurt her. The whispers hissed in the shadows, within, without. Florence, I don't want to hurt you. At this exact series of thoughts, I emerged into something sublime. Times Square, any New Yorker will tell you, is a place you want to avoid. It is human gridlock. Tourists from around the world clog these streets, back to breast, every head cocked to take in the shining screens advertising new television shows and designer clothing. Kitschy stores from high-profile companies like the Candy Consortium down to shameless souvenir stalls crowd every corner. There are Broadway theaters with lines forming around the block. Performers dressed in fursuits parodying popular cartoon characters parade through the central promenade, begging for photos with foreign children. Times Square is the New York City theme park, and it should be avoided at all times, except 3 a.m. I emerged into bright light and deserted sidewalks. I was alone in the most popular place on earth. I was the king of New York City. This famous courtyard of shining towers, red, blue, green, and glaring white light, this beloved place was here for me alone. The only sound was the echo of my sneakers resounding in the brilliant canyon. My heart had roused me from those seductive dreams to discover something new. Hidden in the tide of hours was this secret grotto. I emerged into darkness. As beautiful as the discovery had been, my journey was not yet over. Something inside still bid me to reach the end of Manhattan. The sky was tinting baby blue while I watched the passing street signs count down. I had walked 100 blocks through a tunnel of buildings, forms constantly changing yet preserving the same setting. In the glowing morning light, I contemplated Florence, and I saw that charmed place I had discovered just for me, Times Square at 3 a.m. Then I thought of Peter and my long claws. The flotsam washed around my waist, all of them. The wizard in my memory exclaimed, "Eat his heart," she whispered. Once again, I had proven myself. You know who you are. Florence met me for breakfast that morning. I didn't quite make it to the end of the island. Around 6th Street, I gave up the quest for the end and found my way to Washington Square Park, where I sat on the edge of the fountain, which was empty at this time of year. There I pretended to be homeless, and I hoped one of the other huddled forms on the benches would bother me sincerely and give me an outlet for the feelings I wrestled. You know who you are. I met Florence for breakfast at a place beside the park. We sat outdoors under the olive-colored awning at the delicate, white-painted table of curled iron. She told me about the elephants. When they had built the Brooklyn Bridge to demonstrate its safety to a dubious public, P.T. Barnum, that infamous showman and scam artist, had donated his circus performers, a troupe of 21 elephants, to parade across the structure, successfully crossing from Manhattan to the other shore. Yes, Florence knew so much about the city. I just wanted to learn. We're here after all. I thanked her for a very nice night. I told her she was an excellent person. We just weren't right for each other. I didn't want to hurt her, too. This has been Animal Songs, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb, produced by Supermoon. Find us on TikTok, YouTube, or at our website, gosupermoon.com. That's GOSUPERMOON.com. You can also find our work alongside many other talented artists at looksees.com. That's LOOK-SEES.com. This concludes the Flamingo chapter. I wonder what spirit we will meet next. Until then, thank you for listening.
Thank you.